Hello everyone and welcome to this episode, the Mean Girls one of the Women Talking About Learning podcast. This episode features a few returning guests talking about how women don't always help other women in the workplace. Each guest had something they wanted to talk through and it's our first ever four-handed episode. Our guests are Katrina Collier, Lydia Charilaou, Abby Reynolds and Aimee-Jayne Young. You might recognise some of those names and that's because all the guests are returnees. Katrina works in recruitment and wants to improve candidate experience and was previously on the Workwear episode. Lydia is a people experience professional and Agile HR coach and was previously on the Mansplaining episode. Abby is head of operations and customer experience at 5app and was also on the Workwear episode with Katrina. Aimee is all about helping people make the most of careers through performance consulting, learning technology and employee experience and was previously on the Negative episode of the podcast. As always, I am in the room to keep track of the time, make notes, and this was a fascinating discussion. My favourite episodes always feel like I've just eavesdropped into a conversation, and this is a great example. This is Women Talking About Learning. This is Katrina, Lydia, Abby, and Aimee talking about Mean Girls.
Hey, it's really good to see you all. Katrina, how are you doing?
I'm very well, Aimee. How are you doing? Excited this Friday?
I am. I'm really happy it's Friday. It's been a week.
And we have a good topic.
Really...
Lydia, are you looking forward to our topic?
Hi, Aimee. Hi, Katrina. Yes, I'm really looking forward to this one. Let's see all the stories that we can share. Abby, welcome too.
Yes, thank you, Katrina, Lydia, and Aimee. I'm super excited about this topic today. So yeah, and lovely to meet you as well, Lydia and Aimee, for the first time as well.
Lovely to meet you too.
Yeah, we're here... Oh, sorry, Katrina.
Go, Aimee.
Well, we're here to talk about Mean Girls, really, and it's interesting how this has sort of come about. And I was having a think, because I listen to the Women Talking About Learning podcast, and I find it personally a really inspirational piece of work because I get to hear from all of these amazing voices and I get so much from it. And I was starting to think to myself, what is this women supporting women, women lifting women? What is that? How can we turn it into positive? And I found an amazing quote and I'd love your thoughts on it. And it's Shelley Zallis, who writes for Forbes, and she says, in our individuality as women, we have power, but collectively we have impact.
Oh, lovely.
Oh, that's nice.
It's nice. It's something along the lines. Another one I've heard of that if we do things alone, we're a single drop in the ocean, but together we're like the whole ocean. Or I might be completely misquoting it, but along those lines. So yes, girl power.
I love that, Lydia. And I think that the reason we ended up with this Mean Girls, and we have to, of course, importantly point out we are not Mean Girls.
Yeah.
No.
Very important, underlined. It is more that it's when women potentially unintentionally undermine each other so that we don't come together as a power force and a force for good, which I really think women can. And I'm actually loving the rise of, almost the divine feminine energy, which is making us so strong and incredible. But there's this element of undermining other women, which I just don't think is intentional. I feel that we'll probably talk a little about that and give some examples.
Yeah, that's interesting that you say that perhaps it's not intentional.
I hope it's not, Lydia. I really hope it's not.
Yes.
What do you think, Abby?
Well, I think that's right. I think, I was having a long think about this too. And having worked in the technology sector for the past 8 years, it's got a bit of a reputation for having, not a diverse amount of people in it. So you do often find yourselves in organisations where, for men might be the dominant force in an organisation, for example. And I think, I've been in situations over a period of time where you do sometimes see women rise to the top, but they've had to work really super hard to get there, and they've probably, unfortunately, they've had to change some of the way that they would normally behave in order to, you know, get the things that they want, and then, you know, unintentionally that may cause them to, you know, behave in certain ways which aren't, you know, natural to them. It's because of the environment that's made them be like that. And so I think, yeah, I think that's really interesting. I don't think it's ever been like an intentional behavior when you see it. Sometimes it's they've just, you know, that's just how they've been, you know, programmed to behave inside of an environment that is.
Do you think it's that adopting them almost male persona or the male energy to fit into the patriarchy, as opposed to sort of staying in our, hey, we're women?
The masculine traits. Someone told me literally last week, you know, masculine traits. It's like, okay, yeah. What are those? It
does happen, doesn't it, Lydia and Katrina? I have seen it, you know, where, and also I think I've done it. I think I've done it. You know, I suppose I have to sit here and say, you know, when I've worked in an organisation and I be quite reflective, you know, never intentionally to be mean or anything like that, but you do find yourself adopting behaviours and you think, wow, is that really me? I need to sort that out.
Right. So to your point, Abby, perhaps it's I don't want to be this way, or I don't want to respond to this way, but if I don't, I'm not going to get heard. Or if I don't, then you know my point won't be put across. So it's like making a decision that you don't naturally want to make, but you're pushed into it, maybe.
Yes, yeah, I think that's right. Yeah,
well, it's a bit like the work, you know, Amy Cuddy's work on that sort of power poses and all that. You know, we're told exactly. I can see you, Katrina, doing it now.
Because the podcast listeners know that.
Your hands on
her hands are on her waist as we speak.
Hands are on her waist. But it's true. I completely agree with you, and I know I've done it where I've walked into a, you know, boardroom with a bunch of men, and oftentimes it ends up being a room of white men, straight white men who are all there, and I've got to present my case or do what I want to do, and I feel like, gosh, immediately, whether that's an intentional thing of the situation I'm in, or something they're doing, or it's because I've been indoctrinated to believe this way, I find myself really conscious. How am I presenting myself? What am I saying? How am I standing? And you get that imposter syndrome. I know it's been talked about a lot on the podcast before, of you come out and you're like, oh my God, what did I say? I must have sounded like such an idiot. Oh, and you just go over it all. Do men do that? I don't know if they do.
Oh, men definitely have imposter syndrome, for sure, Amy. For sure. But actually, what you'd find is if you actually did a good 10-minute power pose before you went in, you'd be really calm. Just throwing that out there. But actually, this is also quite interesting, because in a way, we've almost admitted that we've gone to, I'm not saying men are mean, but into that quite male energy where we can be a lot more forthright, sometimes rude, direct, that kind of. So, because I believe somebody didn't believe that women can be mean to other women in the workplace. Was it Lydia? Were you saying that before we came on?
I think that there are women out there that perhaps, or fortunately, haven't come across this, which isn't that lovely, right? To not be in a situation where either it's happened to you or you know of others who have experienced that. I, for one, have experienced that firsthand from other women along my career, and you know, it really does make a big impact in your life and how you, in your belief in yourself, and definitely I have tried my best not to do it to other women. I'm sure that unintentionally I perhaps have said or done something that has come across that way. You know, I'm not perfect.
Yeah. Are you happy to share a little bit more about like an example, Lydia, where perhaps you didn't expect?
Sure, absolutely. I've had both male and female managers. I've had both managers, male and female, have elevated me, and ones who have put me down. So in the, you know, it's not only women, but in this couple of examples, I've had female managers who have, you know, so one specific example, this was earlier on in my career. I had applied or wanted to apply for my for a certification. And part of the certification application was that I had to request almost a statement to back up my application from a peer and my manager. The said manager didn't believe I was ready to go for that process. I believed I did. My peers believed I did. And so, long and short of it, that application, it came to a bit of a head, can't speak, and she basically said, I don't think you're ready. This isn't for you, or etc. I went ahead and made the application and got the certification. And it was that putting down and putting doubts in a person who, at the time, I was a lot younger and more impressionable. And to hear something like that when it was just unnecessary, it was, I don't know, was it out of spite, or it was, I don't know what it was, but was
it just you're not ready, or it was look, I think you're 90% there and there's just this 10% I think you'd need to work hard on, or it was literally, I don't think you're ready?
It would have been nice to be the, let me give you some support and development, but it wasn't. It was very much about, my belief is you're not ready to do this, so I'm not going to help you out. And instead of encouraging, even if I hadn't got the certification, it wasn't encouraging. So what I took from it is, whenever I am in a situation similar or otherwise, to be able to offer constructive criticism or feedback, rather than just like, no, I don't think this is the right thing for you. And something has happened in more recent years as well, where again, I wanted to apply for something and I was told, no, I don't think this is the right thing for you. And I just think that, that's mean, so to the point of our podcast today is, that's just mean. It's not giving any information about, I can support you or develop your perhaps why, it's just like, no. So those are a couple of examples that I've had.
Yeah. How about you, Aimee?
It's not really about what I'm getting from what you're saying is, it's not really about the feedback itself, it's how it's delivered. And I think that's the key, isn't it? It's sort of, there's nothing wrong with a manager saying to you, you're not ready for something. But I think as women as well, what we just have to be conscious of, and I'm very conscious of putting more, women need to do more because we need to do so much already.
Yes.
But we do need to be really conscious of when we're working with other women, when we're in that space, especially as leaders, that we are careful about how we say things and really conscious of perhaps things we've been through in our lives. So like you just said, Lydia, when you're in that situation with someone else and they ask you a question like that, or they want to do something, you will be so much more cognizant of how you feel or felt in that situation with how you give that feedback. And I think it's something that we do have a responsibility to make sure we're aware of and we think about whenever we are working with others or dealing with others. I mean, in terms of stories for me,
I can feel it. There's a list coming. Mind you, Abby, you just unmuted. Were you about to say something before Aimee shares one of her scary stories?
No, I want to hear Amy's experiences because, but I was just agreeing with everything that Aimee was saying, and also listening to Lydia and relating to some of those experiences too. And I think it's tough, isn't it? Because you have to think women, and this is just part of my experience. I don't speak for all, and I know many organisations are trying to address these problems and put things in place. But I have worked in organisations where I have felt that women in the organisation do have to work harder to get recognised and to get rewarded, and to and it's not because they're not trying hard enough, it's because of the environment that they're navigating through. There's lots of different politics and networks that you have to get through, and if you're not part of that network, sometimes it can be very tricky. So in just my experience, sometimes I've felt that I have been right for the job, but you know, I've had to go for it a second time because, you know, it went to, you know, somebody else the first time, and it was because that was a pal, or, you know, somebody that they drink with, or whatnot. And I just think for women, we've got a lot more, sometimes we've got a lot more to navigate through, and that's where we've got to think, oh, if you've got another woman sitting in front of you and you can help and support in some way, then you should be thinking, absolutely, 100%, I'm gonna, you know, support this person and help them get through. And, you know, I have had some women that have supported and helped me in many organizations too. And, you know, I think that's amazing, and I have lovely experiences to talk to about those people, but I also have had the other side of the experiences too. So I think it's you just, for me, it's always thinking, what can I do to help this?
I just wanted to say that we've all been nodding, so those listeners that obviously can't see us, we're all nodding along to everything.
So it's funny you're saying that, Abby, and I'm thinking of a situation I come across all the time. As you know, I was pre-plague booking speakers for Disrupt HR, and I would always want to balance out the male and female speakers at a minimum, right? And then add in the rest of the diversity. And women would so often say no as well. So you're talking about you were passed over because you weren't a mate in the pub, but then there's the opposite of they're almost mean to themselves and say no. And or they'll suggest their team leader because they think they don't have, as a, you know, HR on the ground person, they think they don't have anything to share. And I'm just like, but of course you do. You've been in the industry for 8-9 years. You've got stories. Of course you've got stories. And it's the other. But also I think the unintentional one I really want to share, and I'm sorry if you've listened to the other podcasts, you get this twice, but was again going into that unintentional thing, you know, having stood on a stage, sorry Abby, you've heard this before, done the opening keynote, you know, gave it my all, shared all these tips and tricks, and I, you know, go off stage, and in the bathroom a lady comes up to me and says, yeah, great talk, you've given me confidence to wear a tight dress. And I just,
that was the takeaway.
That was her takeaway. Nothing I said, just great talk. You've given me confidence. But see, this is where I think then it starts being that women are being mean to each other without realizing, and it's the great undermining of it all comes down to how we present ourselves.
Yeah.
And the older I get, the less inclined I am to dress up. So that's sort of ironic. But that we make these judgments. But I think that goes a lot more back to society as well as work. And it's this, we can be mean to each other in that circumstance.
But have you noticed it on,
Aimee?
You know, in the pandemic, especially, I noticed it in a previous role I had before my current job, when people were joining Zooms, and I was hearing managers being like, she could put a bit more effort in. I'm not hearing that. And it would be women as well. Women would be saying it, you know, she could pop a bit of makeup on, or she could do this and that. And you think to yourself, why are you saying that about that woman? And you're not holding anyone else to the same account. And it's even worse when it's women doing it to each other. And I hear it.
Yeah.
You know, and my girlfriends will listen to this podcast and they'll be like, are you talking about me? And I'll be like, yes.
Yes, definitely.
Talking about, you know,
if you spend more than 10 minutes getting ready, it's all about you.
We spend so long criticizing ourselves, talking about our weight, slagging off someone in the gym for wearing a pair of leggings. Why are we doing that? Where's that coming from? Because if you've had that happen to you, acknowledge, honey, you're projecting. You are projecting onto another female, and that is not okay.
Go and look in the mirror and see what, you know, why are you being mean to someone else that you're not seeing in yourself?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So wow. Yeah.
I can't believe managers did that. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, it is. I had a similar story actually, Katrina, to that, where I think I was sat with, there was me, one other person, and another person, and the other person was a female, and the other person was a male, and the male was in the higher position, and we were subservient, or supposed to be.
I can't imagine you be subservient to anybody. Abby.
I don't. I'm not subservient to anyone.
No.
I refuse. My boss
There
is
ain't no
calling me
doormat
later,
here.
going, I think you're subservient to some people. Yeah, and the other person, the other female walked in wearing, a really nice outfit, a skirt, makeup, all of that sort of stuff, heels, and I don't dress like that because that's not my nature. I'm sort of like wear a shirt, I'm a blazer, and a nice pair of loafers, something like that. And he said, "Oh wow, you really made an effort. You look really nice," to the other person, but then just ignored me at the time. Now, not that I was bothered, because I really didn't care for his opinion at all, and I found it really awful that he'd started objectifying us already. But the other female was sort of like, "Oh, that's great, yeah, thank you, I got this done," and then they just carried on in a conversation. And in that instance, it would have been nice for the female to go, "Yeah, thank you," and just compliment me.
So, Abby, you also look at
do you know what I mean? I remember thinking in that situation, and I looked and I thought, wow, you haven't got my back at all.
Yeah.
And I would have your back, but you haven't got my back. And I remember thinking, that's not cool.
So I would have hated being objectified. So I would have totally stuck my arm around you. And how fab does Abby look today? Or something really sarcastic, obvious that I didn't appreciate my appearance being commented on.
Exactly.
That's girls having each other's back.
Sarcasm is one of our best tools, isn't it?
Oh, I love it. I love it.
No, I hear what you're saying, and it comes back to what we're here to talk about today. So we've all shared experiences of where we felt that someone, especially another woman, has said or done something and made us feel less than positive in that way. And so what we wanted to share here on this podcast is how important it is that we collectively, as women and women in leadership positions, offer support, motivation, encouragement to other women around us. So how do we add value to other people's lives, and how do we pick up maybe others who have said something? So being in a meeting with a male manager, and then in that maybe situation saying, is that appropriate? Or how does that make you feel? Or I'm here too, hello, something to really kind of stop people in their tracks to think, is that the right behavior? And it is impacting me sitting here and hearing you say that.
It's interesting, isn't it, Lydia? One that comes as we get more experienced, or old, as I like to call it, that we will be far more confident to push back. But it's also that awareness that they will probably bite back, because I feel a lot of women have then been told they're emotional or they're XYZ when they assert themselves, and they're called aggressive and so on in that situation. And I feel that's possibly why women don't do that. They don't necessarily, because there's a little bit of
because they feel like if they stand up for the other woman, then they're going to get it in the neck. And,
potentially, yeah.
So like protection,
self-preservation,
preservation,
And again, this is not necessarily intentional. It's not necessarily right there in the conscious mind going, what if I do this? It just could be the pattern runs.
So I've got a question for all of you. Have you had an experience in a personal professional capacity that really has stood out to you, where another woman has elevated you? Right?
I thought you were going to say the opposite.
No. See, I'm going for the positive. So, how did that make you feel? What was that experience like?
I had Mel Agostini, who I have finally just found again. She disappeared. So she had a dreadful experience, a recruitment agency that I was at 290 years ago. And she was managed out when she had a baby, because she could do that actually only 16 years ago. That's what happened. And I lost touch with her, and I was heartbroken, and she just suddenly reappeared on the socials, and I found her. I was so excited because she always had my back, built me up, just made me feel really confident to be myself and do my job, if that makes sense. It was so really, really lovely. even though she actually went through a really horrible experience in that very male-dominated environment. That was it. It was just having my back.
And I bet that stuck with you.
It did. We had the best conversation just this week. It was like, oh my God. Just the excitement after all these years to have found her. I mean, she's a lot of the reason I wrote the Robot Proof Recruiter. It was the professionalism and the understanding of how you could do such an amazing job as a recruiter. You know, when that was her teaching, and I now get to pass it on to the thousands of readers, which is just lovely. But she had my back, and she always supported me and trained me. She didn't just knock me down, which was lovely. Oh,
welcome to the book as well, Katrina.
Thank you very much. Edition 2 will be out in August, which is even more worrying because I have a big deadline coming up. If I hit the deadline. So it's got like the little plague involved now because it's made such a difference to the world of recruitment.
What about you, Amy? Have you had an experience like that stuck with you?
I think mine is a collective experience of who is in my squad. You know, who are these women I've collected over the years that I turn to in times of celebration and times of struggle. And I've got a really great network of women around me. I've got friends I worked with in previous organizations who've become my closest friends, who got me through times in my professional life where I really struggled. So, for example, I've got a beautiful, almost 3-year-old daughter now, but when I fell pregnant, I was like, my career is over. Everyone tells me you can't do this. You can't do it. You can't be ambitious.
Well, you couldn't 16 years ago. You can now.
Exactly. Yeah. And these women who lifted me and told me I could didn't even have kids. So it's not about them being mums or having to empathize with that experience. It was the fact that they saw me as an ambitious woman that they worked with, and they knew I could do it. And they really helped me. And also when I went back to work, lifting my confidence and helping me work out what were my non-negotiables. And I think when you've got women around you, and I think about my close-knit group of girlfriends, you know, and you can text them stuff in a WhatsApp group and you're like, hey, is this okay? Or someone said this to me and I'm not sure. And they come back and they're like, hell no, that's not okay. Because you tell yourself, I'm sure you've all experienced this where you've had maybe something said to you at work or, you know, in your personal life and you're like, oh, I'm not sure if that was derogatory or not. I think I'll just leave it. You've gone back to someone and said, hey, can you just clarify this? I don't feel right about it. What do you think? And they come back and they help amplify you and lift your voice and almost confirm. And I think that, my experience is really all the positives are just this group of incredible women I've collected over the years that I've kept and I'm not letting leave my side, really.
How about you, Abby?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Katrina and Amy, that's very similar to me. To a great question, by the way, Lydia, too. Especially in the tech industry over the years, I've collected, a real collection of people and friends that I can go to that I really trust. You know, I'll go out for dinner with them, go for coffee with them, and I've collected a lot of people, females, that I know that I can go to and talk about things, and they give really good advice and I give really good advice to them, and we're just an advisory board where we can really say what's going on and share how we can get through some of the challenges that we experience. So I think that's really important to have that network. I've also had some really good managers over the years that have been female, and I don't want to, if any of my other managers who are male are listening to this podcast,
we love you all.
I don't want to upset anyone because I've had some amazing male managers too, but we're talking about females right now. But I have had some really excellent female managers who have really empowered me and got me to the next level in my career and have helped me. And, I'm now managing teams myself, and I always think about what people have done for me and how I want to make sure that I do the same for other people too, and I think it's really important. But a lot of the time I felt that just having each other's back and empowering each other, especially in organizations, is so important, really. Yeah, and sometimes you have to really go out of your way to do it. You say, that's a really brilliant idea, I love that, Aimee, or and you really have to amplify what you're doing internally, because that's we just need to empower each other, and I think that's really helped me when women have done that with me, and hopefully I've reciprocated back to other people as well. So
that reminds me of the speaker thing again, like going back to, so there's a group of us who all were, well, I'm now not, but we're all running events, and we would then go, because we decided, we made a pact amongst us that we wanted more women to speak. So we wanted to bring up more speakers all the time. And I loved Disrupt for that, because it was, 5-minute talks, so a really easy way to get people, a bit like podcasts, right? Get people out of the comfort zone and doing it. And we made a pact that we'd start pushing back on any events that had manels, the all male panels. And it's, but we had to, we'd had to make an agreement, and then we had to rope in some of the male speakers we knew to get them to say, no, this is unacceptable. Like, where are the women? But it was with this aim of, we can collectively, which is where we started, wasn't it? Collectively bring up. And how exciting it is when you do that. I love seeing people flourish, because you open the door that much for them, and they've just thrown it open, and such a good feeling.
I love that, Katrina, and you've just made me think about something, which is something that I've also seen, which I think can erode away a positive work environment, where I've seen, I think it's really important for men also to empower women to empower other women. And I have been in organizations where men have done the opposite, and they play women off against each other, and they enjoy the
power dynamic.
They feel power dynamic, but also if there's some emotion involved, and they'll say, oh, they're so emotional or something like that, and it's not really. You've played a situation and you've made, and I think that's just so awful when I've seen that happen, and I've had to stand up in a few situations and say that's not cool. I don't, and I think that's where men collectively, and everybody can be, it takes everybody to empower each other, doesn't it? And
This question just in from the person behind the scenes, who happens to be male and quite adorable. What can women do if they think they're being played off against each other? Slap them? No, sorry. Slap the person doing it, not the female. Let me just reiterate that.
I think, well, this is where they collectively need to come together and say, and recognize what is happening and call it out together, and just kick back. It can be tricky, because sometimes the people who are doing that, playing people off against each other, are sometimes people in very high senior roles.
I was going to say that, so that example of saying, oh, of course you don't do this, but so and so does that, so it's trying to get you in line with their thinking, or don't you think that, which is a leading question. It's like, not sure that's going on go down, but perhaps I have, speaking about a specific person, saying, no, I actually have seen improvements in the way they've been working recently, and I'm going to counteract what you're saying. And that, exactly to Abby's point, which is men in more senior positions, who in a more senior position yourself, you can perhaps through your experience say that's not appropriate, and but those perhaps who are younger might not feel that they can. So giving them a voice and being that person that says, actually, I'm not too sure that that's the right way to say that, is, I guess, how we can as women, again, in more senior leadership positions, maybe who feel more confident to call something out, of course, in a positive way, and hopefully that gets taken into consideration.
I love that, Lydia, and I think it reminds me of when we were talking about great examples of women who've lifted you. when I think about those women I worked with who have become my best friends, they're the ones who I know will mention my name in a room full of opportunities when I'm not there. Not for any other reason than they want to amplify me and I deserve that opportunity. I've worked with plenty of women in my time who I know will not say my name because, and it's not necessarily their fault. It's the system. And we talked about this at the beginning of the podcast. I don't think it's intentional. I think sometimes it comes from a place of fear. It depends where you're working. If there's a lack of psychological safety and you feel like you've got to stomp everybody to get to the top. But the real power we have collectively is what we say about other women when they're not there.
So you said that, and I think about, I had a female manager who was a narcissist. I have a lot of experience with narcissists because my mother's one. And the gaslighting and the lying, and that she literally turned the entire floor of people against me. It was amazing. And I could see straight through her, which was a real problem. But when you talk about that projection thing that you said earlier, and it's like, you not only, I mean, you mentioned the psychological safety at work, but she of course didn't have any within herself. You know, she was very, very insecure because all narcissists are. And it's that incapacity to be able to see what they're doing as well that makes it so hard. I'm sure there's lots of women that unfortunately end up in that situation where they're trapped in that narcissist codependent. I don't really know what my point was. Felt relevant when I started, but you know.
Because I think you're right. There's going to be so many people listening to this who will have experienced the same thing and would have spotted that pattern of behavior. And I think even more powerful are the women who are listening to this now, and the men who are supporting and amplifying women who can see women in a situation like this right now, and what advice we give them to how they deal with that. My advice always to anybody is, if you are not happy in a working situation, get out of there. Go. You're worth more. Know your worth. You have to know your worth. Pick your battles.
And if you can't, because I was trapped on rolling commission that I wasn't about to walk away from, was just hold firm, because people will work it out eventually. It kind of sounds counterintuitive, but actually almost trying to say, but they're lying, just makes it worse. It's almost better to just go, okay. And literally the other person will eventually work it out. But if it doesn't feel right. And it's a really counterintuitive piece of advice. But if you're stuck in, like I was, on rolling commission, but it was okay. Thankfully, the crash came and I got to leave that recruitment agency. There were a lot of benefits of 2008.
It's tough, isn't it? And I think it's easy us saying get out or saying those things. And there's a lot of other things at play, you know, if you've got a mortgage to pay or rent or whatever, and, you know, you're depending on, of course, you know, so many other things. Of course, yes, try to be in a position where you feel that you're happy, number one, and that you feel that you are respected, and that you are adding value. And if you find yourself in a situation where all the things we've described from a mean girl perspective are happening, then reach out to someone and speak to them. So don't stay silent, because you know that we all know what that can escalate to something else. So you know, if you have to stay in it because you need the job, etc., make sure that you're talking to someone, at least one other person, about it, and trying to find ways to approach the situation in a different way, or something to make the situation more bearable.
And I think, as Amy was saying as well, not necessarily within the company, go out to your outside network as well. If you feel like you haven't got anyone within, which can happen as well, you're almost sanity checking it out, you Amy, when you go, is this right? And get your support there, which will probably help you then get your support internally. Because sometimes, I mean, being on the receiving end of a narcissist is fun. 5 minutes. We could talk all day. This is dreadful. What do you mean we've only got 5 minutes?
There was only one point I really wanted to raise, I guess. And I know it sounds like I'm putting a lot of pressure on women, but I just think when we're coming from this place of giving advice and supporting and amplifying, I think for me, something I've learned in the last 2 years is this, you know, all women will go through this cycle at different times. but in particular is recognizing my privilege, that I will go through less of this than some of my colleagues who are Black or who are LGBTQ, who will walk in a room and have a very different experience to the experience I will have. And I think for me, it's always a little sense checker when I'm like, oh my goodness, this is really hard for me. I stop and I think, oh, how might so-and-so be dealing with this?
Very true.
There's your empathy coming out, Aimee.
That's it.
Yeah. No, I think that's so true, Aimee. Yeah, I think that's a lovely lovely thing. I mean, I am part of the I am, you know, gay, and so I have felt, you know, some in workplaces where I think, you know, are other women experiencing this? And I'm not, you know, at times I've thought, oh, it's all in my own head. It's not, but I think it is real, and there are, you know, it's definitely. I think you do raise something very, very important there.
Almost having your advisory squad, as I've decided to call it, because we got both those words, didn't we? But having that squad to go to say, is this in my head? Are other women? And I feel like our ability to speak out and ask has just become so incredible. And actually, the example I've just written into edition 2 of my book is about an employee on LinkedIn writing 2 blog posts about his experience working at that company and how it wasn't as open and as dynamic as it says it is. And like his entire experience of being bullied and having to leave. And just that we can now do that, because much as it might not seem easy for a lot of listeners to leave, if you just search jobs right now, if there was a year to change jobs, it's 2022. We overfired in 2020. We're trying to overhire now. It's not working. There are jobs aplenty. So but people feel really empowered because the internet's given that ability to do that. But also the great things like the technology with like WhatsApp to be able to have your advisory squad, as I've decided it's now called, on tap.
I love that.
Right there.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So like don't keep silent, you know, make sure
speak
you've got
up.
people to speak to and ask those questions.
Yeah, I think definitely. Definitely. I was just going to say something to Amy's point around, you know, how you've got to think about the different minorities that are also going through the same thing. And I think in my time, I have been called, oh, don't worry, she's just a fiery, angry lesbian who hates men. It does make me laugh. It's kind of, no.
Yeah. Wow.
That's not.
Don't men love to call us man haters though? They just love it. They do. I was asking them to stop raping and murdering women, and I got called a man hater as well. Man, they love throwing that at us. Yeah. Bless them. So rude. Not taking for what you just said, Abby, which is so important, but just that immediate tell back a name as soon as we call them out. I think that goes back to my earlier point, Lydia. Yeah. By that, you've got to be confident to call them out.
Yeah. And how do you become confident when you've had other women around you elevating and supporting you, and you know, making it okay to say those things? Yeah.
Abby, I totally want you in my corner.
I think we found our squad. This is it.
Totally.
It's quite awful though when you have to sit there and go, but I'm not a man hater. Am I really angry?
No.
Or maybe I'm too angry. And then
that's those emotional men name calling.
Yeah.
So on that note, that you know, we're not man haters. We're all saying that.
No.
And we
don't hate women either.
Yeah, we don't hate women.
We love all people.
We don't hate anyone. Not unless they're really mean to us.
Yeah, and then we do. No. Well, thank you, everyone. Amazing.
Yes, thank you so much.
Amazing.
It's been great to meet you all and to have this chat.
Yeah,
and you're in our
can't wait to chat again soon.
Definitely.
Yes, you can sit with us. It's all good.
It's all good.
Who's your squad? Who's got your back? One of the highlights for me is women creating new connections and squads from being on the podcast. If you want to join the squad of women talking about learning, then please do get in touch. We record regularly and make it really easy for you. As always, you'll find our contact details, our guest contact details, and links to useful resources in the show notes. Thank you again for listening, and we'll see you soon.